This video is brought to you by Mint Mobile. So this right here is the Galaxy Z Fold 5, and I've been using it on and off for the last year now, and it's a year old now. I want to talk about what my experience has been like and how it's been holding up and whether or not this is a phone worth getting right now, especially now that the Z Fold 6 is available. And I'll also talk about why I'm personally not upgrading to the Z Fold 6. So first talking about the build and design, it's pretty sleek and clean overall. I personally have the blue colorway, which was a Samsung exclusive, which already came with a matte frame, which is new to the Z Fold 6 for the regular colorways. And I personally like that the corners and the edges are rounded and soft. Now granted, I haven't held or used the Z Fold 6, so this is just going off what I know about my Z Fold 5 and from what I've seen from other videos about the Z Fold 6, but I like the build and design of the Z Fold 5. Now on top of that, as you can see, I pretty much use a case most of the time. But because I do use a case, the phone is overall relatively heavy. I know the Z Fold 6 did lose some weight, which might be nice actually, since I like to use cases on my phones. Because this phone, with the case that I'm using, which is the Samsung S Pen case, comes to around 300 grams. On its own, I think it weighs around 253 or 55 grams. And I actually did end up replacing my Z Fold 5 using Samsung Care Plus, which by the way, that experience was super seamless and super easy. I filed a claim and they literally gave me the option to just replace it for a deductible fee of $100. And with no questions asked, I just put in what was wrong with it, which in my case, I had a cracked lens and a couple of scuffs because I tested it dropping it with a case a while back. So I was able to get it replaced with I think a renewed / refurbished one. It was the exact same colorway, which I was happy with because I liked my Samsung exclusive colorway. But before I replaced it, my original Z Fold 5 was honestly and otherwise in pretty good condition. The hinge was pretty much still as good as new, and this replacement still also feels relatively good. I'm not sure how much it was used previously, if it was brand new, but it still is really nice as far as how it feels, its stiffness, it holds its different angles whenever I'm using it in flex mode. And the inner screen also had no issues. There was no signs of it cracking or breaking anytime soon. And it is IPX8 water resistant, so it is good for when I use it in the shower. Unfortunately, it's not dust resistant, which the new Z Fold 6 I think has some level of dust resistance, but I think it's not for the small granular sand pieces. I think it's just for everyday lint. So it doesn't make a huge difference to me that the new Z Fold 6 has a newer, higher spec rating. And the Z Fold 5 obviously has two displays. You got your cover screen, which is a 6.2 inch display, and then the inner screen is a 7.6 inch display. Both of them are dynamic AMOLED 120Hz display with a peak brightness of 1750 nits. Only difference is that the cover screen is a Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2 versus the inner screen is a flex display. So both displays are going to look top notch when it comes to the quality of the content that you're consuming, whether it be just basic browsing on the internet, scrolling around on social media, or watching videos on YouTube. I personally like to keep my display set to natural, and I do use the eye comfort shield on adaptive mode, which does reduce the saturation a little bit on the display. So my display doesn't look as vibrant and as saturated compared to maybe someone else who has those features turned on and may also use the vivid mode. But to me, the quality still looks fantastic when it comes to overall media consumption. I will note that you do notice a good amount of glare on the inner display, especially when you're outdoors. The inner screen can look a bit warpy, and you can see the crease if you're looking at it from an off angle. But if you're looking at your phone directly at the center, you likely won't notice it unless you have the phone turned off. You can also still feel the crease as you're scrolling around, but honestly, over time, after using the Z Fold 3 now to the Z Fold 5, I've gotten used to it at this point. Same thing with the under display camera. I don't remember which Fold was the first one to have it. It might have been the Z Fold 3. And again, if you look for it, you'll notice it, but unfortunately, it's still there. And I'm surprised they haven't improved on this, especially on the Z Fold 6. That's another reason why I'm not upgrading, because it still looks pretty much the same as far as how it's hidden and also the actual camera quality. And of course, the Z Fold 6 does have a slightly bigger aspect ratio, making it a bit wider both on the cover screen and I think also on the inner screen. So the aspect ratio would just be a little bit different from the Z Fold 5 to the Z Fold 6. But again, not big enough for me to feel like I need to upgrade to it. I've always been upgrading from the Fold 3 to the Fold 4, then to the 5 because they kept increasing the wideness of the cover screen. But at this point, I feel like I might as well wait every other year now because I'll see a bigger improvement there, or maybe they'll just change the whole form factor eventually. Because on the cover screen, it is still a bit tight, at least for me personally, to be able to type with 2 fingers. I do have to rely a lot on the swiping gesture to be able to use the keyboard with one hand, which is a positive too, because it is pretty one-handed friendly to be able to swipe around and type on here with one hand. And the Z Fold 5 also does have dual fire and speakers, which overall sound really good. Great for watching content, also great for listening to the occasional music. And you still also get a physical SIM card slot available. The phone is also eSIM compatible. And nowadays I do spend most of my time at home, so with the Wi-Fi, using Wi-Fi 6E, it is pretty fast and reliable, no issues with connection drops or anything like that. And when I do use my mobile data, also no issues. Phone calls rarely have any, but when I do, they are reliable and don't have any issues with dropped calls. And that's also partly thanks to today's video partner, Mint Mobile. I don't know about you guys, but I hate how streaming services are constantly going up in price every single month. And there's something that we don't necessarily need, but we all really want. We need it to watch some shows that we like, to watch sports, movies, etc. And to be able to fund my streaming services, I gotta cut back somewhere else, and that's where Mint Mobile comes in. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice speed, coverage, or data because they're built on the largest 5G network. And I've personally been a Mint Mobile customer for well over 3 years now, and honestly, I haven't looked back. I'm able to do my everyday stuff from watching movies, downloading games, browsing social media, using Google Maps, and I'm not even able to notice the difference when I'm on my mobile data and on my Wi-Fi. And switching to Mint is super easy. You can bring your own phone, transfer all your contacts over, and use an eSIM. Or if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, you can also use a physical SIM card slot, which I personally prefer because I can easily take the SIM out of my phone and then insert it into a different phone. So if you want to save a little bit of money yourself and also fund your streaming services just like me, use my link down in the description, trymintmobile.com/tacotech to get yourself started with a 3-month plan for as little as $15 a month. Now moving on to biometrics of the Z Fold 5, you do have facial recognition using the front cover screen camera as well as the under display camera on the inside, which works relatively well. The only times it doesn't work for me is when I'm in a low light situation or if my phone is at a weird angle. But you do have the reliable physical fingerprint sensor built into the power button, which works pretty much 99% of the time. I honestly have little to no issue nowadays because they did update how you actually set up your fingerprints. It used to be that it required you to open up the phone the whole way, but now you can actually have the phone closed, and they do give you the option to choose when the fingerprint sensor is always on. I personally have it set to just a cover screen so that I can quickly just tap my finger on the fingerprint sensor without having to actually click on the power button. Now, as far as performance, you do get the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 of 12GB of RAM, 256GB of storage, up to a terabyte. Honestly, performance is really good. Even though it is last year's chipset, it still performs really well. I will occasionally run into the odd delay, glitch, and sometimes even a bug in the software, but never to the point that the phone freezes up, gets too hot or warm. That never happens with the Z Fold 5, at least with my personal usage and experience. I do things from just basic browsing on social media, shopping apps, the browsers, email, YouTube. I do a lot of media consumption on here, so that's very basic usage in my opinion. I'll play the occasional game here and there, but usually ends up being Clash Royale or Clash of Clans, which aren't the most graphically intensive games out there. So as far as performance, I'm more than satisfied with what you're getting right now with the Z Fold 5. Which leads me to the software. You get Android 14 with One UI 6.1 with the July patch as of the recording of this video, which right now it's July 27th. And with One UI, as you may or may not know, you get a ton of customizable settings and features and options with this Android skin. I personally am a big fan of One UI because of all the things you can do. You're able to tweak various things on your lock screen, on your home screen, the way your quick settings look. And if you download GoodLock, you're able to go even further with your small tweaks that you want to make. From customizing the S Pen menu, changing the precise grid size that you want, changing the look of your icons with an icon pack, and there's so much more. If you want an in-depth look at how I set up my Samsung phones, I'll leave a video linked down in the description where I walk through how I have my S24 Ultra set up with One UI. Let me know if you want to see a video with the Z Fold 5 on a foldable, because it is a little bit different, you know, because you have obviously your cover screen, then you have your inner screen. One thing I do like is that Samsung does allow you to split up the way you have your cover screen set up as well as your inner screen. So you can have two completely different setups. I personally have it set up so that the cover screen has the apps that I use the most when I just want to use one app at a time on the cover screen. And if I want to do multitasking, all that kind of stuff, or want to use a specific app on a bigger screen, then I'll have those ready to go and easy to access on the inner screen setup. Let's talk about multitasking. One UI, I think, does multitasking really well. You're able to multitask with up to 3 applications split between your display. It can be one app on one side within 2 other apps on the other side, split in half. And you can force every application to go into this multitasking mode, even if the app isn't optimized. Now, of course, because some apps aren't optimized, there will be a good amount of apps that just completely bug out or crash because they're not meant to be put in those various aspect ratios. You're also able to use picture-in-picture and multi-window, which allows you to drag and drop applications into these floating windows to be able to, I don't know, make it look like it's a Windows PC or some sort. I personally don't use multi-windows, but I do use picture-in-picture every now and then. I also really love using flex mode to be able to watch content easily. So this will allow you to force the app to the top portion of the screen whenever you have your phone folded up like this. And then at the bottom, you'll have various controls. So when I'm watching a lot of streaming content, then I'll have the option to play, pause, and move forward with a little timeline. You can also do this with pretty much every application that you have installed. It'll just typically give you a little cursor at the bottom. It kind of makes it look like a mini laptop, although I barely use that, but it is kind of cool. Now, really quick touching on the ecosystem. This is, of course, a Samsung device, so you have the ability to connect this into your Samsung ecosystem / Android ecosystem. So I personally have been using recently the Galaxy Watch 7, which stay tuned for a video about this. I really like the Galaxy Watch 7. It's been a much better improvement to the previous Galaxy Watches, but I'll leave that for a different video. But you can connect to those really easily. Your Galaxy Buds, I personally use my Buds 2 Pro a lot. I can easily switch between my tablet and also the watch when I'm listening to music or watching content. You have the various Android features such as Quick Share, Find My, and also Google Messages. And Samsung also has their own version of the Google call screening. The Google call screening is basically the Google Assistant answering for you, and you have these predefined prompts of what you can have the Google Assistant ask the caller. But with the Bixby text to call, this is where you have to type in what you want Bixby to say to the caller, which is actually more useful in my opinion because you can actually have a conversation with someone by just typing out what you want to say. If you're ever in a situation where you can't physically answer the phone call, but you still need to talk to someone, or if it's a random phone call, then you can still just Bixby to text it. And if they listen to Bixby give their little prompt at the beginning, then it might be someone legit, or if they don't, then obviously you just avoided some kind of spam call. And I won't go too in depth with the AI features. I know you're probably bored to death hearing about AI. I am myself, which is partially why I'm also not upgrading to Z Fold 6 because it was just a lot of AI stuff that they were adding, and a lot of that stuff may end up coming to the Z Fold 6 at some point via an update. But the ones I use the most are ones that won't be changing much with the Z Fold 6, that being the Google Circle to Search, which allows you to quickly search stuff on your screen by just circling it. It's very useful, whether it be actually searching for an image, or I personally use it a lot to copy text on applications that don't typically allow you to copy text, such as, for example, Google Messages. I'm not sure why Google Messages doesn't allow you to copy an individual word or something in a message. You can just use Circle to Search to precisely select the text that you actually want to copy. I also really like using Samsung Internet's summarization feature. I think it's fantastic to be able to summarize a quick article when I don't want to read the whole thing. This helps me dictate whether I even need to read articles. So if I'm looking up something specific, I can use the summarization feature to first tell me what it's about, and if I want more detail, then I'll actually read the article. But otherwise, I rarely use, or if ever have used, the other AI features naturally in my day-to-day. And the Z Fold 5 is still set to get 3 more major OS updates with 4 more years of security updates, so it's still got plenty of life left in its software support. Now, as far as the cameras, I'm not a heavy camera user myself when it comes to cameras on my phone. So I'll show you guys some samples and just talk about what I've noticed and what I don't or do like about these cameras. I will say I am pretty disappointed that the Z Fold 6 didn't change their cameras much besides maybe some processing that they're doing, which is again another reason why I'm not upgrading to the Z Fold 6 because the cameras are pretty much exactly the same. With the front camera, I think it's okay. It's not the best selfie shooter you can get out there. I like the colors personally that you're getting from the front cover screen selfies, but I don't like how the background doesn't have a natural bokeh effect. That's likely because the sensor isn't that big, but it just looks very over sharpened in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of how it looks. You are able though to use other cameras to take selfies, that being the inner display, under display camera, which is a complete joke because it looks awful. It's like you're taking a photo of a 2000s phone again, and you happen to have a bunch of fingerprint smudges on your camera. It just looks bad. It struggles with not only just giving you decent HDR with normalizing the highlights and normalizing the shadows. They're always either too bright or the blacks are just crushed. It just doesn't look good. Unless you're in very, very good ideal lighting conditions, then you may be able to get 1 or 2 decent shots. But otherwise, that camera is best used for just video calls. You can use the back cameras though, which give you the best quality possible for your selfies. But for me, the colors that they use on the back are just a little too vibrant, too saturated, that don't really make my skin and just your facial features look good in my opinion. While it does look detailed and also the bokeh looks pretty nice because you have a bigger sensor, I just again don't like the way it's colorized. It's too saturated for my liking. But that does lead to it being pretty decent when you're actually taking photos of stuff that isn't you. Just generally overall photos look pretty well detailed, but again, it just comes down to the color. They do tend to be well saturated and really well vibrant, which can make skies look really nice and blue, greens look deep green, and the food photos can look extra enticing, but it's all going to come down to your personal taste, whether you like that or not. The telephoto is also good, but again, not the best. I still don't understand why Samsung doesn't give us the ultra-like cameras on the Z Fold series. We're paying so much more money for the Z Fold line than the standard S20 line. I just don't get why we're not getting the periscopic telephoto zoom. It might be because it's too thin. You probably need to make the camera bump a lot bigger, but honestly, give me the S21 Ultra camera bump attached to the Z Fold 5 or the Z Fold 6 or the Z Fold 7, and I'll be happy with that. Because the telephoto only gets to 30x, and anything past 10x, in my opinion, is pretty useless. So I would just stick to 10x or anything closer to optical 3x. And in low light situations, that telephoto struggles big time. It just introduces a ton of noise because it's just not big enough or wide enough to bring in enough light. I would personally stick to the main lens whenever you're shooting in low light conditions, because even the ultra wide, while it doesn't look too bad, it does start to introduce some noise in the corners of the photo. And the same thing could be said with the video. Video is 4K 30. You're able to get up to 4K 60 and also 8K with the main lens, but I only ever shoot video in 4K 30. The video is vibrant, good detail, but the telephoto does struggle once you get past, I would say, 5x. But similar to be able to taking selfies with the back cameras, you can take a vlog style video with the back cameras, which could make this a versatile unit for someone who wants to be creative. Additionally, you can prop this up with flex mode, so you can convert your phone into its own dedicated tripod. So overall, the cameras are good enough if I was to be buying the base model of some kind of flagship phone like the S24. But because I'm buying a Z Fold lineup, I expected more. Now moving on to the battery life, you do get a 4,400 milliamp hour battery, which will definitely vary from user to user because all depends on what you do on your phone as well as which display you use the most, whether it be the cover screen or the inner screen. And I definitely noticed that in my day-to-day usage, every single day I may have different battery life on my device. But typically my average tends to be around 16 hours of total usage. My lowest days, sometimes I only get 10 to 12 hours of total usage with maybe 5+ hours of screen on time. On my lighter days, I'll get anywhere from maybe 18, sometimes 24 hours of total usage, but I usually only get about 2 to 3 hours of screen on time on those days. So again, those numbers probably mean nothing to you because it will vary again on what you're doing. And you can see in the screenshots what kind of applications I'm using. You'll note that there's a lot of media consumption there, specifically with YouTube. And the charging speeds are capped at 25 watts for wired and 15 watts for wireless. Again, the same thing as the Z Fold 6, which is another reason why I don't feel like the need to upgrade because they're still getting the same 25 watts of fast charging. It takes around an hour and 20 minutes, which is relatively slow compared to other devices. This almost takes as long to charge as my Tab S9 Ultra, which I mean does use 45 watts of fast charging, but that's a tablet. I don't know. I expected 45 watts on the Z Fold 6, but 25 watts on the Z Fold 5 does take a good amount of time. So in the end, the Z Fold 5 honestly isn't really the best phone you can buy out there. Clearly, there's newer phones out there on the market, but also just generally, if you're looking for a new phone and want the best bang for your buck, the Z Fold 5 isn't going to be for you. Foldables are just in general not going to be for you because they're definitely very much expensive for the best bang for the buck. But if you're looking for something fun and intuitive and interesting and you've used slap phones all your life and want to try something new, I honestly think the Z Fold 5 might be the best starter foldable. For the price, I think it goes maybe renewed and used for around 1,000, maybe a little bit less than 1,000, still a good chunk of change. But if you get it through like maybe say Amazon renewed, then you could try it out for 30 days, 60 days. I'm not sure how many days they give exactly for you to just return it if something goes wrong. But if you don't like it after that, you have the ability to easily just return it. And that way you don't have to commit to a brand new phone that you may end up not liking. And the Z Fold 5 honestly does provide you with about maybe 90% of the experience of the Z Fold 6. There's just small minor tweaks that they made and changed. So I personally don't think that you need to go out and get the Z Fold 6 if you already have the Z Fold 5. Z Fold 4, Z Fold 3 users, that's a different story. I think that those users definitely have a reason to upgrade because they skipped the Z Fold 5. But with that being said, I have the Z Fold 5 and I'm not upgrading unless Samsung has some kind of really good promotion later on, because I will say the pre-order promotions weren't that great. I know previously in past years you would get the phone, some watches, maybe a buds, cases, chargers for like $500 to $600 to upgrade. And right now that's what it would have cost me just to upgrade the phone, not adding any additional accessories. So yeah, I'm gonna wait. Hopefully there's a promo at some point, but if not, I'm perfectly fine just sticking with my Z Fold 5 until the Z Fold 7. So with that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this was helpful, and peace.